families, your friends, and the communities, and being able to take the information that we give you and to help those people. So we're asking you to kind of step up today when you get this information and share it. The other two branches that we handle in public advocacy are mediation, which I don't know if anybody's ever filed a complaint with the Attorney General's office at our Consumer Frauds Bureau. Has anybody ever done that? If you've done that, then that complaint goes through mediation. Because the Attorney General can't represent individuals, we don't represent individual people in court. We represent a group of people if there is repeated and persistent fraud. So what do we do for the individuals? We have mediation. We reach out to businesses when we receive written complaints from consumers. And we ask the businesses to respond to the complaints. And that mediation process is often quite successful because most legitimate businesses want to satisfy consumers and want to resolve problems. If, though, a business is involved in fraud or repeated illegal activity, then we litigate. That's the third area, and that's the area that I principally get involved in when we have a number of complaints against the business that aren't being resolved, and consumers are not getting refunds that they're entitled to, or entering into contracts that are unfair or illegal. A business needs to stop that. We use the courts to get what's called an injunction. It's an order from a court that says you have to stop that business practice. If you don't stop, then you're going to be held in contempt, and you could actually go to jail for it. And we've done that in a number of cases. Our main focus is to clear up whatever that bad act is and to make sure that it doesn't happen to anybody else. And so because this group is essentially retired folks, we realize that as the number of people who retire increase in this country, and it's the fastest growing age group in the country, scam artists become more targeted to that area. Why? They go where the money is. It's as simple as that. You wouldn't be a criminal if it were easier to work. That's the mindset of the criminal. But I have to tell you, from many of the scams and activities that we've seen, some of these criminals put so much work into stealing from people, they'd be better off just getting a job. And just do it honestly. If you're going to put that kind of work into it, use your mind for something productive instead. But because seniors are a large group, and because often you have a lifetime of savings that you depend on to live on, to pay bills, the criminals are going to target those areas where the money is. So, the Attorney General has come up with a program called Smart Seniors, and that's the bulletin that we gave you. So, green cover with Eric Schneiderman's picture on the front. And it's an attempt to take you through and recognize scams generally, and then we pinpoint a few in particular to talk about that we see that are very common. Does everybody have a book? No. Do you want to just grab one out of the box there? Pardon?
Could you give me your name again?
Yeah, it's Ben Bruce.
Ben.
So when we talk about scams, what do we really mean? We mean basically fraud, which is taking money or something of value from somebody using false or misleading information and to their detriment. That's what we're concerned about in scams. And scams usually target one of three areas. Sometimes it's all three. But you can see scams that target certain emotional areas. The first of those emotional areas is often greed. And so in this vein, we have things like the lottery scam. We have get-rich-quick scams where you invest a little bit of money and you get some huge guaranteed return and you have to do nothing. Now, the fact that this scam is used to target seniors doesn't make any sense to me. Because if you've worked a lifetime, you've been around long enough to know there are no free rides. There's no free lunch. If it's too good to be true, it probably is. For this reason, scams that are based on greed are less likely to be reported to us. People don't come to us because they're embarrassed. And they say, oh my gosh, I can't believe I fell for that. I was being greedy. And so they don't even report it. And that's one of the reasons why this scam continues to work and be successful. Let me give you two examples that we have in the Rochester area. One of them involves lottery scams. You've heard about lottery scams where you get a letter in the mail or a telephone call, and nowadays maybe it's an email message that says that you are a winner or a finalist in a lottery. All you have to do is send some money, and the money is either used to pay taxes or to pay some fee, and then you can claim your check. Well, that scam has evolved over time, and now that scam involves actually sending a check out to individuals. And we've seen them here for $5,000. And it looks like a real check. A lot of times it has the little watermark on it and all of that, and they're in a variety of colors, and it looks like a real check. And the whole idea is, here's $5,000. This will pay the taxes that you owe on the lottery winnings. So take this money, deposit it in your bank account, and use this money to pay the taxes. And then you have to fill out this claim form for the rest of your money. And often what happens is that check bounces, and then you get hit with fees from your banks. The other thing that happens is they're trying to collect your information. You know, sometimes this scam asks for your bank information because they want to do a direct deposit to your bank. So they want your account information. Sometimes it is additional contact information. We had one of these talks I did in Henrietta for a seniors group there. A woman came up to me before I even started talking and had a check like this for $5,000. And her name is Doris. I will never forget Doris because she said, Mr. Bruce, how could this possibly be a scam? I got the check. And I said, that's the hook, Doris. Don't deposit the check. It's not a good check. There are some things that you can look for. In this particular case, the check was from an American company. It had been a stolen check. And the postmark on the envelope was from Canada. So that should have been a clue to her that there was a disconnect between who made the check and where it came from. And there were other problems in the letter that came along with the check. But in the long and short of this whole situation, I asked Doris, did you actually enroll in a lottery? She said, I don't know. And I said, Doris, nobody is so lucky that they can win without even entering. It just doesn't happen. So don't cash the check. But in a situation like that, where you think you're going to get $5,000 and you didn't even enter the sweepstakes, what are they playing on? They're playing on greed. And they're hoping that you will want the money so bad that you will overlook these small signals that something's wrong. And you will deposit the check, that you will make other payments. We had one gentleman who for 11 months was making payments every month to get his lottery money. And, you know, I had a consumer fraud rep who was on the phone with him, begging him every month to stop making the payments. But he wanted to believe. So there's an emotional hook. Another emotional hook with the money is sometimes just the flip side of it. It's luck. And you've heard this one with the grandparent scam, where a call gets made, and it's going to be a senior citizen most of the time, although we have a lot of young grandparents. It's typically going to be a senior. And it's, hey, this is your grandson or granddaughter. I'm in Canada, and I got caught over here, and I need money to get out of jail. Please don't tell mom and dad. You know how they are, but I can trust you. Can you send the money over and don't say anything to them? You know how they are. And we all know how our kids are. And we're like, yeah. You know, I could do a better job raising my grandkids than my kids could do, right? So they're pulling that love cord, and they're saying, oh, this is an opportunity to do something for my grandchild, and so I'm going to send them money. Only to discover later on that the grandchild is still here in the U.S. and nothing is wrong, and the money is gone. They usually ask for the money to come by Western Union or by mailgram or some very quick method so that they got the money and they're gone. That's another thing to look out for with any of these scams. Yes?
What do you know about iTunes?
iTunes?
iTunes.
The way that you get music?
No, it just happened to me last week. What you're saying now, my so-called grandson came and he talked. I swear it was my grandson. So to question him, I said, Nick, what's your middle name? And the guy told me, now how many grandsons use a middle name? You know, usually it's an initial.
Right.
My grandson, because he's a designer, he uses his middle name on all his resume. He knew my grandson's middle name. So he said, because he won $3,900, he said, you go to the drugstore, he said, you've got a couple drugstores in your area. He mentioned Rite Aid and
Right, you can go there and you can deposit the money.
CVS.
Right.
So he said, you go there and you get an iTunes. So I'm hard of hearing, so I said, what's an iTunes?
Okay, it's a card that
So
you
he
can use
spelled
to pay
it
money
for
and
me,
you can send that.
C-U-N-E. I asked 10 of my friends, they never heard of it. And he said, there's an Apple on it.
Right.
So he told me when I go to the drugstore, you get 400 or 500. And I said, well, that's only 2,000. What about the 3,900? He said, well, they only sell, each drugstore only sells you $2,000 worth.
Now, how would you know that?
He said, you ask for 400 or 500. Then you go to another
Go to the drugstore and get more.
When I went to the second drugstore, he said, get 400 or 500. And he wanted me to write it down. He said, are you writing this down? And I said, yes. So when he said, the second drugstore, you get another 4, I said, well, that's too much money. He said, well, we'll give your grandson $100 back.
Right. Who was calling you? Was it supposed to be your actual grandson?
Yeah, well, he was in the British-owned island.
British Columbia?
Yeah, and
Bermuda?
I went to the Greece police, and guess what the policeman told me? It's common.
Right.
A little town like Greece gets a lot of scam calls.
Yeah.
So I said to him, is the telephone company interested in this? Because I'm supposed to be talking to the American ambassador
Right.
there. And he said, no, the telephone company isn't interested. But he said, we are. So the police in Greece get a lot of scam calls. So I called my son at home. Now my grandson lives out in Oregon. But I never believed it would happen to me. But I swore it was my grandson I was talking to.
Take a look on page 3 of the handout. Can you look at page 3? It
Yeah, right
shows
here.
the details of the grandparent scam. Okay. It's very much like that, and your story is very common. And it's one of the reasons why we come out here to make sure that other people know. One of the things that's very difficult for grandparents to do is to just simply say, have you contacted your mother or father? And talk to them. You don't have a responsibility to raise the grandkids. And you should always be concerned about secrets. When somebody tells you, don't tell anybody what you're doing. Whenever you hear that, the red flag should go up. The reason why they don't want you to tell someone is because they are concerned that you will back out of this if you hear from somebody else. So that's the principal thing. Get other people involved. The more information comes out, the clearer it'll be that this is a scam.
And then the grease policeman told me that I'll get a call back. And 2 hours later, I got a call back, and my grandson, Grandpa, how's the process going? And I said, the scam is over. So the receiver went down.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, yeah,
Discovered
you know,
scam.
it's one of these things where, and I get concerned, and this goes back to even the sweepstakes issue, where people are using their personal information and getting it out there. So the question is, how did they get your personal information to call you in the first place? And a lot of times this information can be bought online. One of the ways that they get your information is from other people that they've successfully, that they scam. So one of the examples with the lottery scam is that they ask you to fill out this information that includes a telephone number, and they use that to contact people to pitch scams like this. So be careful about signing up for sweepstakes and for lotteries and for those kinds of things, because you have to be concerned about how people are going to use your personal information to try to run scams. So I recommend against it.
Then I was telling my story to a friend of mine, and guess what he said? He was into a $5,000 scam. He admitted that he got scammed, but he said, I was lucky. He said he's got a rider on his house insurance. I never heard of that. You can buy a scam insurance. I never heard of it.
They will insure a lot of different things out there. You have to be concerned about what the cost of the insurance is. For many of these different options, there are companies that insure your identity. You've heard of like LifeLock, for example. You know, LifeLock is a company that the Federal Trade Commission and our office has sued over their advertising. They advertised that, here's my social security number. I'm putting it on the side of this truck because I am so confident that nobody can steal my ID. They're no longer advertising that. There was a lawsuit brought by the Attorney General, and actually, I believe 30 different states brought lawsuits against LifeLock because they're essentially insuring your protection of your identity when they really weren't doing anything. So they've had to change their advertising. They have to be able to tell people that we cannot prevent someone from getting your identity. Because there are a lot of easy ways that have been around for a long time. If you lose a wallet, depending on what you have in your wallet, that may be one of the ways that a scam artist tries to steal your identity. There is a very famous case. Does anybody know the name Ben Bernanke? Does that ring a bell? Former chairman of the Federal Reserve Bank. His wife, a little less well known, was with him at a restaurant in Washington, D.C., when someone came up from behind the chair and just scooped up her purse that was on the back of her chair. It was gone. They took her wallet. In her wallet, she had credit cards, she had her checking account, she had her Social Security card. And it turned out that the people who stole that purse were part of a ring of thieves. And they would apply to banks and get other accounts. They applied for credit cards in that person's name and gave other addresses. And this group was using basic, simple theft to now create new identities for somebody. So that's an example about how people can be taken advantage of. It's not high tech. These are basic ideas that get used. And a lot of this is protecting your own personal information. So for example, don't walk around with your Social Security card in your wallet. You generally don't need to show your Social Security card. So that's one very important piece of information because it's what's used for your credit scores, it's what's used to open bank accounts, it's what's used often for credit cards. So you want to be sure that you leave that at a secure place at home. Other areas where you have your personal information, telemarketers that can get your personal information. And one of the things that I want you to consider doing is cutting down on how your personal information is getting spread. How many people get letters from banks telling you that you're pre-approved for a credit card? Okay? Pre-approved. How can you be pre-approved? How do they know that you qualify? How can they do that? Here's how. Here's how. The credit reporting bureaus sell your information to the banks. Yeah. They sell your information to the banks. The banks can contact the credit reporting bureaus and ask for a list of names and addresses of people with scores above 700 or 650 or whatever. They don't get the scores because the credit reporting bureaus won't release the scores, but they will release the names and addresses. So then the banks know that you're in the right range to qualify for a credit card, and then they send you the pre-approved credit card. What you should want is to hold on to your private information. So I want you to take a look on page 10. Okay? On page 10, you see there unsolicited credit and insurance offers. You can opt out of having your information sold to banks by calling this telephone number and telling them you want to opt out. You should do this today. Do this today. Because what this will do is this will prevent banks from buying your information. They're not going to send you a pre-approved credit application because they don't know what range your credit score is in. If you want to apply for a credit card, apply for a credit card and give them that information. Don't allow them to have your information and then send stuff out to you. You don't want that. All it takes is someone taking your mail. Very low-tech way to begin the process of trying to take your identity. So this is one of the things that you want to do. The other thing is that you want to be on the do not call list. How many people have cell phones? Okay, some folks have cell phones now. Well, if you didn't take your old landline number as your new cell phone number, you have to call the do not call registry to get on the do not call list so that you don't get telemarketer calls on your cell phone. Okay? Right now, telemarketing companies are starting to get cell phone numbers they use a computer that just randomly draws numbers, so they're starting to get into cell phones now. They're required by law to buy the do not call list. They get it on a computer disk and they load that into their automatic dialer and it skips those numbers. So if you had do not call on your landline, it doesn't carry over. You need to get it for your cell phones. So on page 9, you'll see right in the middle of that page, do not call registry. You need to do that for your cell phone.
I guess the question, I have here is that, I know I've used the do not call on my landline, but it doesn't seem to stop it. It may slow it down a little bit, but it doesn't stop it getting a lot of these
Yep,
calls.
let me explain to you how the do not.
Starts with a V and then about 14 characters after that.
Yeah, let me explain to you how the do not call line works, because I think it's a little bit of a misnomer because it doesn't create a block on your phone. What it does is it's a list that gets generated every 90 days, and that list is a list that telemarketers are required to buy to skip those numbers. So what does that leave? That leaves the scam artist. The scam artists who are not legitimate telemarketers, they're the ones who are left calling you once you're on the do not call list. That's how it works. So what that means, if you get a call from a telemarketer after you're on the do not call list, that person is a criminal. And in fact, under federal law, every telephone call that a telemarketer makes to a person on the do not call list is punishable by a fine of $11,000 per call. That's what the person on the other end of the line is risking to call you. So you hang up the phone because that person who called you is a criminal. That's how it works. You don't have to worry about being rude to somebody who's a legitimate business that's just trying to make a buck. The person on the other end of that line is a criminal, willing to risk an $11,000 fine to get your money. Hang up on that person. That is how the do not call list works.
Now, if you wind up with maybe 20 calls from sweet little Rachel telling me how to get my credit card, I mean, almost every dinner time,
Right.
she calls. I hang up right away.
Right. Well, and you should be on the do not call list. If you're continuing to get those calls, then that's a problem. Here's the thing. When the do not call list first came into play, we could track those calls. We could go after the people. We've gone up to Canada. We've worked with people in the Ontario province police in the past. We've broken some groups down there. But the problem now is that most of these calls are being generated through the internet, and they can't be traced. And they're using what's called a spoofed number. So even if you have caller ID and you can tell us, oh, the call came from 585, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, doesn't matter. By the time we get on that number, it's a false number. So that's why it is so important to just hang up now. And you don't have to get into a conversation or a debate with this person. You don't have to tell them how terrible they are or that you've been to this talk and you now know they're a criminal. Just hang up. Just hang up.
I do, but they continue to call back.
Yeah, one of the things that there are a couple of companies that have blocks that you can buy for your phone. They're not completely effective, but what they can do is they can block calls when the caller is trying to hide their telephone number. They have those that are available, and it sends a message to the caller that this line does not accept calls without caller ID, and then it hangs up on its own. So there are some of those services that are out there, but unfortunately, I think for as long as we have phones, it's one of the things that we're going to have to watch out for. So those are some of the things that are significant scams that we want you to be on the lookout for. I also have given you our weekly newsletter. There is a sign-up sheet going around. If you want to get the newsletter, just check off the box so that we can send it out to you. This gives you some information about some of the issues that are going on across the state. And this particular edition talks about some of the problems that we're dealing with right here in Rochester, including insurance scammers who were arrested here in Rochester just last week. So take your time, read through that, take your booklets home with you, share them with your friends, your neighbors, your families, because it's important for our communities to be strong, and that's only going to happen if we have information and we're educated about these scams. Thank you.
Question. What about the pyramid?
Pyramid schemes,
Yeah.
they do happen. You're more likely to see something like a pyramid scheme as part of an investment scheme. They are fairly common. They're just another form of a scam that it's a sales pitch to get you to go out and see your friends or your neighbors or the people you work with and pitch a product or pitch a service or have a person be involved in investment. And then they now have the right to pitch the same product or the same investment scam to somebody else. And again, the whole idea there is it's a scam predicated on greed. The whole idea that you no longer need to work for anything. You can simply pitch this scheme to 10 other people. And then you tell those 10 people that they can pitch the scheme to 10 other people. And that's an example of a pyramid scheme. But again, it's a scam that is rooted in greed.
Yeah, well, we've got people knocking on our doors, and this has been going on, I don't know how many years now, about the electricity. And even our neighborhood organization have tried to do something about it, but we still get people knocking on the door about it.
Is that,
Yeah.
in regards to that, Bill, sometimes, once in a while, I used, not now because I got mad at this one person one day and I said, don't call me, I'm going to call the police and get my 30-30 car back out. But anyways, I get called from energy companies,
Yeah.
like from IT,
Yeah.
Energy, or something like that. If some IT was, I remember one, that was one of them, might have been another one, I forgot the name. And they say, oh, you got a reduction on your gas, on your electric bill, all right, and get your electric bill out and read your numbers and then give you a price, you know. And I says, thank you very much. I'm with RG&E. I'm in the apartment. The only thing I pay is electric, and that's it. Bada bing, bada boom, done. That's all I pay is electric, and with RG&E, I'm satisfied with it.
Right. Yeah.
And that was one time I almost went into it, and they say, you know, you're this
Well,
and that. And I got a letter from RG&E saying we're going to cancel your thing and go into this. And I said, wait a minute, you know, I had to call RG&E and straighten it out. She says we'll take care of it. I almost went into it unconsciously. It's easy to do.
What that is it's energy billing. It's not providing energy services. You would continue to get your energy from RG&E. Someone else would be billing you for the same energy. And there are options that some companies have. There are some companies that say, we're a green company. We use renewable energy like wind and solar, geothermal or hydroelectric. And that's where all the energy comes from. Well, that's not often possible to fund a whole bill through those sources. So what they do and what they're supposed to do is they're supposed to go, and if they can't provide 100% green power, they're supposed to actually make a payment So the effect is you give them $100 for green energy, they take that $100 and they put it over to a place that generates green power. So it might not be the electricity coming through your socket, but your money goes to green power. Unfortunately, it's usually a little more expensive because they still have to go through RG&E to get them to get the energy, and they have to pay themselves for the billing. So instead of having RG&E's bill overhead, you have their overhead, and so often the cost is a little bit more.
So you get probably a surcharge will increase.
Sometimes it might be a little bit more, but one of the things to really watch out for, and here's the hook with energy services, is that they may give you, you may actually see a reduction for the first couple of months. But then they go up, and the rate increase is higher than everything you've saved.
If you start anything in the beginning,
Right.
like everything else, you get it at a promotional price.
And that's
What's it called,
essentially
right?
what you're buying.
And then after that,
You're-
once you get
you're
it,
essentially buying that. And what they'll do is you'll sign an agreement with them for 6 months or for a whole year. And so for the first 3 or 4 or 5 months, you're actually doing better than your RG&E program, and then it starts going up, going up, going up, going up. And if you stay in that program in that next year, you may find that your bill is significantly higher. And we have had complaints about that, and that is what we've been able to do is get those agreements terminated, and we've been able to get refunds for people in many cases.
Sir, I'm on the do not call list, and I frequently get calls from solar energy people, and I heard that they're exempt from the do not call list. Is that
Now, let me
correct?
talk about the exemptions from do not call. There are some calls that are not considered telemarketers. So, for example, charities are not considered telemarketers. They're not really selling you anything. You're making a donation. You're not expecting to get anything in return. It's just a donation. And I think also as a matter of simple public policy, if it's a not-for-profit organization, we allow them to make calls to people to get donations. So they're exempt. Political organizations, same idea. They're not selling anything. When you make a donation to a political campaign, there's no product coming with it. Any company that you're already doing business with can contact you. Okay? Those are the 3 basic exceptions to the do not call list. So if it's a company that's calling you, trying to sell its services, and you're on the do not call list, you ought to hang up from that. Now, is it possible that the company's made a mistake? It might be. We continue to get complaints on do not call, and we do follow them up. And for those companies that are legitimate, they buy the list. They pay the fine, they buy the list, and they continue to do their business. I unfortunately do have to go. I appreciate your time and questions. Again, look forward to seeing you out in the community, and hopefully we'll be able to share this information with people you live and work with.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
I use caller ID, and if I don't have a number, I don't answer it. If they want to leave a message, great. Otherwise, if we get 5:30 to
While they're doing that, can we get another show of hands of how many want to go to the
telemarketers
meeting?
in the middle of your day.
Ten?
Well,
Yeah.
I don't recognize the number.
Yeah, we did all
Leave a message, otherwise.
That's it.
Do you have Time Warner telephone? Is it how you get your
No,
caller
I-
ID?
Okay.
No, I would.
Thank you
Right
everybody
here.
for coming. I appreciate calling us, speaking for those. Thank you, Mr. Bruce. Thank you. I appreciate calling this meeting to a close.
Okay.
So yeah, I usually call her ID, and if I don't, a lot of times it comes in, no name. The other day, kept getting these calls, and the number was 0000000.
Well, like you say, they're calling from the computer. You
Yeah.
can call from the computer, and then. But see, when I was getting those telemarketer calls, and I did an annoyance trace through Frontier because they're Frontier too, and I did that, and I followed up with Frontier, and they said we got your information. They called me back after you did those annoyance traces, and they said, well, we can't do anything about it. He said, just hang up next time they call. I say, that's not solving the problem. The problem is that they're calling me, disturbing me, whatever I'm doing, I got to go answer the phone. And that's not the way it should be. So even doing the trace, the annoyance trace didn't work for me.
That's I don't know. I'm threatened sometimes to take the phone. Or call me use smoke signal.
But caller ID has been a blessing
Oh,
for
yeah,
a lot
without
of
that,
people.
Without that, we'd be lost.
Yeah, I don't have caller ID, so it's always a surprise when I answer the phone who's there. But I've been getting those energy calls just about one a week at least.
Oh, yeah.
So they want me to switch over.
I get them in the mail. There's not this much switch over.
I'll just tell you.
Right now, the rates are.
I have a lady friend, pretty sharp.
$6 a kilowatt hour. Raising down to last year about 12 cents. 5 cents.
Well, see, I wish they would do a story on those alternative energy suppliers because I don't know which one's the best. The New York State Public Service Commission should do something on that.
What you got for me? Goodness. That's lunch for 3 days. You want one?
No, I'm good, thanks.
My wife will have those for dessert. So, yeah, no, that the phone is a nuisance.
Oh, yeah.
I don't. But I just,